Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me for part two of my discussion with Kim Golding. I hope you've all had time to watch part one and reflect on a lot of the interesting points that we were able to get through in that discussion. We're going to be getting into part two, and the point that we're going to be joining the conversation is where we were discussing parenting styles and the ways that different cultures have distinctly different parenting styles, and how this can be a difficult or a perceived barrier for some practitioners. So I hope you find this as interesting as you did part one.
Yeah. And then just understanding different people's religious beliefs, cultural beliefs.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, in the area of work I'm doing, understanding their parenting beliefs is really important, which is something I am aware of. And understanding, because I'm going to be giving ideas, advice, thoughts about parenting the children.
Exactly.
And where those parenting ideas clash with ways that they've been brought up to bring up children, needs to be talked about and thought through. It may not change my advice, but it has to be discussed, doesn't it? I suppose an obvious one is smacking is physical chastisement. So there's sometimes a strong belief in the importance of those physical chastisements, which is very counter, of course, the parenting that we're suggesting. So really important to talk that through and think about that, and think about, is that something we need to address? Think about your discomfort, my discomfort about the different ways of parenting and what's important at the end of the day, and what's culturally different, and that's okay.
Yes, that is. I mean, eye contact is another one.
Another big one.
As it's seen as something that is done out of respect for your parent when they're talking, not to make eye contact with them. And I suppose that goes very against PACE and the DDP way of working, but it's understanding that cultural difference in the relationship between the parent and the child. Is what I come across a lot. From the outside looking in, Afro-Caribbean or African parenting can come across as quite harsh and distant and not affectionate. But if you was to ask the children if they were lacking in warmth and compassion from their parents, you would get a very resounding, yes, we did, but it just doesn't appear that way through a Western lens. So I think getting an understanding of that is a good building block to getting a relationship with the foster carer and with the child that is
because one of the strengths of I think, correct me if I'm wrong, of those cultures, Afro-Caribbean, is the sense of instilling a sense of belonging, a sense of community, which I think we in white British are very poor at. I'm not sure. Yes, a sense of belonging within your kind of nuclear family, but the idea of extended family, we're losing that so fast. I remember hearing of, I think it was a couple of ladies from Nigeria, I think, who came to London. Someone just told me this anecdote, and they were just horrified at the way that we were parenting our children. To them, it looked so abusive. Really? And part of it was the sheer social isolation of parents with their children. Where you think, well, yes, there's we can learn from other cultures. There's, practices, socializations that they bring in that we're losing touch with. So it's all worth thinking about and being really aware of. And if I work with a family from a culture that's different to mine, a DDP would definitely practice understanding first. Let me understand. So actually eye contact isn't something we'd be big on. I think eye contact, it's what you're comfortable doing. But if that was an issue for the parent, for maybe one of the transracial families where this child won't look at me, I don't know whether they've had that socialization, but it's worth just taking that step back. And I think this is where DDP is so powerful, because it encourages you to slow down, to take a step back. Let's make sense of this before we think about what to do, before we act. Stops you reacting. So instead of getting all problem solving about what are we going to do about the eye contact, let's take a step back and think what that means for you and for the child.
Brilliant.
And that understanding leads us to decide what to do about it. And it might be it's fine. You know, the child had 8 years in living in one culture. She's now come into your family, and she's bringing that cultural practice. If she's comfortable like that, and then that's fine. We don't need to address it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. Getting that understanding of it's all perspective, isn't it? Being able to see from the other culture's perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, that's what DDP is trying to do all the time, is to understand through the eyes of the individual person, unique person in front of you.
Yes.
And, you know, that embraces any area of difference, doesn't it, as well?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
But what I think you're encouraging me to do is to also take a step back and slow down and understand my response to that as well, and to actually spend more time reflecting on that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've done enough of that all the time, you know.
Yeah. It's probably going back to the constructive conversation protocol. The number 3 was the experiencing discomfort, managing the discomfort and understanding where it's coming from, and not letting that influence your reaction is really, really important in these discussions around race and culture and identity.
Yes, absolutely. And also reflecting after the moment and recognizing when you have, and having the confidence to go back and repair the relationship. Say, do you know what? I was reflecting on our conversation last week. I was feeling a bit uncomfortable. Can I check this out with you? You know, and repairing. And again, I think there are a lot of the DDP principles that lend themselves to thinking about racial differences. And thinking about how we embrace the difference within our work.
Exactly.
And obviously the slowing down for sure. Understand before you act. Reflect, self-reflection, repair relationships when they need repairing, and take responsibility for that. Yeah. You know, these are all things that are very within the DDP model already.
Yes.
And lend themselves to us becoming more sensitive to each other.
Definitely. I think the framework is there. It's putting the pieces all together, and I suppose the relationship building, if you have a good relationship with somebody, probably makes that repair a lot more easier.
You're absolutely right. And building the trust so that the families I work with can say to me, hey, Kim, I thought about what you said. I was really upset last week when you said X. And I would hope they'd have the confidence to bring that to my attention. But that's because you spent the time building the relationship and building the trust.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I think that is so key, putting the time into building that relationship so that you can do those repairs. It's really, really crucial. Probably not diving in with 2 feet in the first meeting as well, so you're not making too many obvious mistakes and obvious ruptures, because going into therapy for a minority's perspective can be quite a daunting thing, because you're coming out of your comfort zone, and probably you may even be going against family groups' advice. So you're really putting yourself out on a limb. So it's going to be really important that the transition is quite smooth in the early parts, so there's not too many bumps.
Yes, which of course our first starting point is safety. I have to make you feel safe with me. I have to give you an environment within which you feel safe.
Very much.
And yes, if you got some of your discomfort, you come into therapy, come into a white therapist, come into a white female therapist, all of that needs to be thought about, doesn't it?
Definitely.
What's that like for you? Yeah. And you know, with therapy, it's the same with working with parents.
Yes.
You know, what's it like when I as this white British woman come into your home, and you may feel a scrutin. I mean, I hope it's non-judgmental, but a scrutinising of your parenting, because of course that's what we're here to do, isn't it? To look at, you know, how is parenting this child, and what's difficult and what's challenging, and how can we think about parenting a different way. You know, I hesitate to say it, but you're scrutinising the parenting.
Yes.
You know, so you know, those conversations are important, aren't they? What's it like for you?
Definitely.
I'm coming into your home, or I'm having insight into your home, and yeah, I welcome you to talk to me about that.
Yeah. I just even think that would be a brilliant icebreaker or a way to approach that issue, because it's going to be in the back of everybody's minds, but it's addressing that elephant in the room. And again, it would make me feel a lot better about our relationship if you had the openness to ask those questions. I mean, we're focusing on race and culture, but then religion's a massive part of
absolutely
as well. It's a very fundamental building block of their culture. So again, that needs to kind of be brought into the conversation as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's not something I'm good at. I have been good at doing. And I think, again, going back to my own upbringing and that fear of noticing difference, but also that fear of getting it wrong, that fear of being insensitive, the fear of saying the wrong thing, or how do I say it? You know, I'm sitting with you, I can see, you know, again, if I didn't know you, I can see that you're a different heritage to me. Maybe Afro-Caribbean, I'm not sure, I've only just met you. How do you being worried by me? You know, so I say, hey Delroy, are you Afro-Caribbean? You know, I might be saying, you know, you might, how on earth did you think that? You know, what do I say? And then of course she said, no, I'm British. You know, of course you're British. You know, so it's really hard as a, you know, I suppose owning my kind of whiteness and my privilege. It's really hard sometimes to open up those conversations. Because I worry that in opening my mouth, I'm showing you my white privilege. And I don't want to do that, because I want to respect you. And how to, you know, and then, this is all too difficult. Let's talk about it. I don't know if, you know, this is my own experience. I don't know if other white people would feel similarly or different, but you know, this is my experience of kind of, I feel a bit like going into a minefield, and I might step on that mine at any moment. And of course I can repair, of course I can be open to being told and having feedback, but it's hard to know you've got it wrong. I want you to feel comfortable with me. I want you to feel equal to me. I want to feel equal to you. I want you to feel equal to me. And even in saying that, I'm thinking, is it okay to say that? Saying I want you to, am I implicitly showing you a bias? I don't know. You know, and then I second guess myself, thinking, you know, it's tricky. It's a tricky area, isn't it? And you know, it's great that we're increasing awareness and having these conversations, but I do it with some trepidation.
I think that what the key to, or what helps, is me and you having this dialogue and this conversation. It will help, hopefully it will build up the confidence within yourself to be able to speak to somebody other than myself and have that conversation like, hello, obviously you're Delroy, and then asking where they're from. I can see why that will probably build up a lot of worry, because for me it's very obvious. I can tell if someone's from Africa, or if someone's from Jamaica, or if somebody's from America, just by the way that they look. But for yourself, it's probably really daunting. You probably wouldn't know where to start. So I really get the apprehension that you would have.
But even asking that question, Delroy, because the answer might be, well, I'm from Birmingham.
I know.
You know.
It would be
100% correct. 100% correct, but it wasn't quite the question I was trying to ask, and I've asked it clumsily. Say to me, where are you from, Kim? I'll say, I was raised in, you know, I was born in Yorkshire, I was raised in Kent. Yeah. But, you know, where am I from? Well, my roots go on one side to Yorkshire and on the other side to Russia, Russian Jewish.
The funny thing
You know,
is, I've done that so many times myself, Kim, where somebody's asked me that question, and I know what they're getting at. I know they want me to say, my dad's from Jamaica and my mum's from St. Kitts, but I deliberately say I'm from Birmingham.
Yeah, and I understand that, but then I feel, how do I ask the question? Is it easier to say, where are you from? I suppose because they've got the accent, then some sense that they have grown up there, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it's...
If you're looking for the correct wording, it probably would be something along the lines of, is your heritage Caribbean?
Yeah.
Or is it African?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's probably as simple as that, really.
And it's laziness with language, isn't it? Where you're from is quicker than saying, oh, what's the heritage of your parents, or what's your heritage? Yeah. So we kind of take shortcuts and trip ourselves up in the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's strange that you do kind of put your own barriers in place that probably don't really need to be there. But like you say, it's been probably clumsy with words, and then you may have just dug a hole for yourself, and then you're kind of worrying about how am I going to get out of this hole, where that's probably like just making the transition or the development of the relationship a lot more difficult than what you needed to have been in the first place. Yeah,
absolutely. And that fear, and in reading White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, reading her book and really, really impressing on me, I guess, that sense of the fear that white people can have, particularly in my sort of class, I guess, in my privileged middle class Britishness, and sense of, I'm not racist, you know, and actually the shame of being exposed as racist. I think that really, really struck me when I was reading that book, that it would shame me if I discover I've done something which reveals me as having, racism. Yeah. And that fear of being exposed, and her, well, you are racist. You can't get away from that. It's just about being aware of it. And that's a big jump to make when you've grown up priding yourself on, I'm not racist. Yeah. But of course, the unconscious bias is there, and the sense of white privilege. I mean, we talked in a previous conversation about the series Noughts and Crosses. And which I've now finished. I've watched it all now. And I did think that it was. I really enjoyed. I read the book many years ago, but I really did enjoy the series. But I also was intensely uncomfortable with what I was seeing. And that was because I was seeing myself not in that white, supreme privileged position that I've grown up in. And actually, I didn't like it. I wanted it all to turn around. You realise how much that's a part of you and your identity, and how hard it is. I don't know, what am I saying? To identify, I suppose, with a person who hasn't grown up with that privilege. I actually don't want to identify with that, and that's what that program taught me. I don't want to identify with what it's like to be in a minority. I'm really happy being in the majority, thank you very much. And it's kind of tough, isn't it? It's tough to step out of that.
It really is.
Yeah, because by stepping out of it, you're acknowledging things that you didn't ever want to see as part of yourself.
Definitely. Yeah. I think because you're labelled with a good person is deemed not racist, and a bad person is deemed as being racist. So all of those connotations come into play, and that kind of blocks you from developing your own self-awareness of the issues of racism, because you want to put yourself in that category of not being racist, because that's what a good person is. And it horrifies you that some of the things that you may have unintentionally done or are doing puts you in that category.
Yeah. And I've had lots of experiences of that without wanting to confront it. Simple things here. I get on a bus, and who do I sit next to on the bus? And I know I have biases there.
Yeah.
Yes, some of them make sense. You know, I'd rather sit next to a woman than a man.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense. But white woman, black woman,
Yeah.
I would have a bias about that, and I don't want to have that bias, but it's there, isn't it? And I think what white fragility showed me is I have to confront that in myself.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And if I don't confront that in myself, it is going to impact on my practice. Yeah, I will take those biases into the families I'm working with. Yeah. So it's such an important thing for us as practitioners, therapists, psychologists, social workers, youth workers. So important to have these conversations.
Definitely.
And have be aware of your own biases, and invite your families that you're working with to let you know if anything's uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. That's the first and most important step is addressing these issues. If it's not addressed and brought to the table, then we're never going to make any kind of progress. So I think it's brilliant that within the DDP world that there are conscious steps that are being made to address these issues and have these conversations. It's the first step to making it more accessible to people like myself.
Yes, and we need to do that. There's not enough throughput from people out of a quite narrow range of class, sexuality, race. Yeah, it's too narrow at the moment. We've got to broaden it out. So this is so important that we have these conversations and understand where we're putting people off. You know, continue with their journeys. You know, people come to level 1 but don't necessarily continue.
Yes.
And you know, there are lots of factors for that.
Yeah.
But if we're contributing to those factors, we need to know about that. Definitely.
Yeah. And I suppose it will benefit everybody. It will benefit the minority groups because they're accessing a really good service, and for the practitioners, it widens your base and develops your own practice as well, and conscious self-awareness.
You know, I have you in my life. I can talk to you if I'm struggling with a family where I think there might be issues to do with the Afro-Caribbean heritage. I can come to you and get advice. How do I have that conversation? You know, and if those people aren't within the DDP community, we don't have that resource, do we?
Definitely.
You know, so we need a broad range. For all sorts of levels, we need a broad range of people.
I think that's also important as well at all levels, so that there is equal representation. That's really got to be from the ground up.
And it's going to take time to build. It's not something we can do quickly. But we're taking the steps to do towards doing that.